If you put me in the will, I won't put you in a nursing home." Those words came out of my son Sebastian's mouth while I was connected to those machines, beeping like crows of ill omen. But what hurt me most wasn't the extortion itself, but the smile he had when he said it. A cold, calculating smile, the same one he wore as a child when he broke something and blamed his younger brother. There, in that hospital bed, with my chest burning and death breathing down my neck, I realized something that chilled my blood. My own son was evaluating me like a business investment. The days before my heart attack had been strange. Sebastian had started visiting me more often, something that had seemed beautiful at first. "How you doing, old man?" he'd say with that smile. I interpreted as filial affection. But now, remembering every conversation, every seemingly innocent question about my savings, about whether I'd updated my will, about my plans for the future, everything took on a sinister meaning. "Dad, don't misunderstand me," he continued, speaking with that honeyed voice he used when he wanted something. "But let's be practical. Michael doesn't have space in his 2-bedroom apartment. He works 14 hours a day at the auto shop, makes peanuts. I have the big house in the gated community. Patricia can take care of you during the day. The kids are grown and don't give us trouble. But I need to be sure that my effort, my sacrifice, my time will be appropriately valued." Valued. As if changing my diapers when I had changed his for years was a favor he was doing me. As if the nights I spent awake when he had fever as a baby, the times I sold my tools to pay for his private university, the family vacations we never took because every extra dollar went to his expenses, all of that was water under the bridge. As if the 30 years I dedicated to forging him as a man had been an investment that he now had the right to recover with interest. At that moment, connected to cables and with morphine clouding my mind, I couldn't respond. But something inside me, something primitive and animal, awakened. An inner voice screaming that this wasn't normal, that no son talks like this about his dying father, that there was something profoundly disturbed in the way Sebastian looked at my weakness as a business opportunity. I left the hospital 2 weeks later, physically destroyed, but mentally more awake than ever. And that's when my descent into hell began, because I started noticing things I had previously overlooked. Tiny details that, added together, painted a picture that terrified me. Things that made me question whether I really knew my own son, whether I had really raised the man I thought I had raised. The first alarm bell rang when I arrived at Sebastian's house. Patricia greeted me with a smile so wide it seemed to hurt her face, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dear father-in-law, what immense joy to have you here with us," she said, hugging me. But I felt how her body tensed against mine, how her hands trembled slightly, how her breathing quickened. It was like she was acting in an amateur theater production and had completely forgotten her lines. They installed me in the back room, what used to be Patricia's sewing room. "It's quieter here, Dad," Sebastian explained with that sweet voice I was already beginning to recognize as false. "You'll be able to rest better, recover faster." But I immediately realized it was the room farthest from the rest of the house, the one separated by a long dark hallway, the one with the thickest walls because it had been built as a storage room originally, the room where no one would hear if I screamed for help in the middle of the night. The first days passed in a routine that seemed relatively normal on the surface. Sebastian would get up early, dress in his gray insurance executive suit, give me a kiss on the forehead that felt like ice against my skin, and go to work. Patricia would prepare breakfast, give me my medications with that rehearsed smile, and then take care of household chores. The kids, Matthew at 16 and Sophie at 14, would greet me in the mornings before going to school, but always with a strange distance, as if they had received instructions not to get too close to their sick grandfather. But I began to notice the cracks in this facade of the perfect family. The looks, those looks that Sebastian and Patricia exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. Looks loaded with meaning, with complicity, with shared secrets. Looks that reminded me of the conspiracies I saw in spy movies, where villains communicated in codes that only they understood. The first conversation that completely alerted me was one I overheard by chance during the 3rd night at their house. I had gotten up to go to the bathroom, dragging my feet because I still felt weak, and as I passed through the hallway, I heard their voices whispering in the kitchen. At first I thought they were talking about normal marriage problems, but when I paid attention, the words chilled me to the bone. "How much longer do you calculate we're going to have to endure this?" Patricia asked, with a voice I barely recognized. It was a harsh voice, tired, full of resentment. "I don't know. The cardiologist told me that with his heart like that, after such a severe heart attack, it could be months, it could be years," Sebastian responded. And I could hear the frustration in his tone. "Not years, Sebastian. I can't live like this for years. The kids can't bring friends home because Grandpa is here with all his machines and medications. I can't have friends over. I can't live my normal life. The house smells like sickness and old age. This is completely unsustainable." "Calm down, my love. I already talked to lawyer Martinez about the will issue. As soon as we have everything legally arranged, as soon as all the papers are in order, we'll evaluate our options." Options. That word pierced me like a dagger. What options were they evaluating? The nursing home they had mentioned as a threat? Or something much worse? Something I didn't even dare to think about? I returned to my room with trembling legs, not from physical weakness, but from pure terror running through my veins. My own son and his wife were talking about me as if I were a problem to be solved, an obstacle in their lives that needed to be removed in the most efficient way possible. The next day, while Sebastian was at the office and Patricia had gone shopping with the kids, I decided to explore the house more systematically. It was my house now, right? At least temporarily. I had the right to know the place where I was going to live, to familiarize myself with every corner. But what I found in Sebastian's desk, in the drawer that was barely ajar, as if someone had forgotten to close it completely, left me literally breathless. There was a clear plastic folder labeled with my name, Robert, Documentation. Inside were documents that made my hands tremble as I read them. Detailed quotes from nursing homes, but not just any nursing homes. The cheapest ones in the South Side, the ones with the worst reviews on the internet, the ones that appeared in the news for cases of negligence and abuse. One of them, called St. Joseph's Home, had a handwritten note from Sebastian clipped to it. Ask if there's significant discount for annual prepayment. Verify refund policy in case of early death. But that wasn't the most disturbing thing. There was also a photocopy of my last will, which I had made 5 years earlier, after my wife's death. Sebastian had marked each paragraph with yellow highlighter, had made margin notes with different handwriting, as if he had been studying the document for weeks. He had calculated the approximate value of my house, which he had considerably overestimated, my bank savings, my 2010 car, even my workshop tools in the backyard. In the upper right corner of the photocopy, in his perfect, clear handwriting, he had written a sum that made me vomit right there on his documents. Total approximate estate, $4.2 million, minus nursing home expenses, estimated 2 years maximum, $800,000. Projected net profit, $3.4 million. My own life, my 72 years of existence, my work, my sacrifices, my joys and sorrows, all reduced to a mathematical equation. My own son had calculated not only how much my death was worth, but how much it would cost to keep me alive, and had determined that the investment was only worthwhile if I died relatively quickly. That night, when they served me dinner, I noticed something that put me on maximum alert. There was a strange taste in my food, something metallic and bitter that I didn't remember from my previous meals. But even more disturbing was the taste of my medications. I had been taking the same pills for blood pressure and heart for years. I knew their taste by memory, but now there was something different, a more intense, more chemical taste. "Did you change any of my medications?" I asked Patricia while she washed dishes. "No, dear father-in-law, they're exactly the same as always," she responded without turning around, but I saw in the window's reflection how her hand holding the plate trembled. "Maybe it's because of the new food I'm preparing, more organic and healthy for your delicate heart. The doctor said natural nutrition is key to recovery." But I knew something wasn't right. I began to feel weaker than was normal, considering my condition. There were days when I woke up with mental confusion I couldn't explain, as if my brain were wrapped in cotton. Other days, I found things in places where I had never put them. My glasses in the kitchen when I always left them on my nightstand, my wallet in the bathroom when I never took it there, My medications disorganized in the medicine cabinet when I meticulously organized them every morning. One afternoon, while pretending to be taking a nap, I heard Patricia talking on the phone, very quietly in the kitchen. I had to strain to listen, and what I heard made me feel like liquid ice had been injected into my veins. Yes, Dr. Ramirez, exactly as you indicated last week. No, he doesn't suspect anything at all. He thinks they're his normal medications. Yes, the symptoms are appearing gradually, just as you predicted. How much longer do you calculate? We'll need to see definitive results. I understand perfectly. Yes, we're going to continue needing the death certificate to be very clear and specific about natural causes, without any kind of ambiguity that could generate uncomfortable questions. My breath stopped. Death certificate? Natural causes? What the hell was Patricia talking about? And who was this Dr. Ramirez, who seemed to be coordinating something related to my death? Why was Patricia talking about definitive results, as if she were carrying out some kind of scientific experiment with me as a guinea pig? That night, I couldn't sleep a minute. I stayed awake in that strange bed, in that room that smelled of mothballs and abandonment, listening to every noise in the house, every whisper, every step in the hallway. And around 2 in the morning, when they thought everyone was asleep, I heard them talking in their master bedroom. Their voices came muffled through the walls, but the silence of the night allowed me to catch every horrible word. I can't stand this farce anymore, Patricia said with a voice broken by frustration, acting all day like I care, taking care of him, smiling at him, pretending I worry about his well-being. It physically disgusts me to have to touch him, to hug him, to fake affection. And the kids are starting to ask uncomfortable questions about why Grandpa is so confused lately. Very little time left, my love, I promise. Sebastian consoled her. Dr. Ramirez personally assured me that with the dose we're gradually administering, it's a matter of 3 weeks, a month at most. His heart is already very weakened by the heart attack, and this is going to seem like a completely natural progression. Heart failure aggravated by post-heart attack stress and advanced age. And are you absolutely sure that no one will suspect anything strange? What if Michael asks for an autopsy? Who's going to suspect something, Patricia? He's a 72-year-old man who just had a massive heart attack. His heart is in pieces. The doctors already said any day could be it. Even Michael will think it was the natural progression of his illness. In fact, he'll probably thank us eternally for having cared for his father with so much love and dedication until the end. Michael, my younger son, my poor Michael, who worked double shifts at the auto repair shop to be able to visit me on weekends, who sacrificed financially to bring me fresh fruit and vitamin supplements he thought would help me, without having the slightest idea that his older brother was systematically poisoning me in the name of brotherly love. Besides, Sebastian continued with a coldness that made me understand I really didn't know the man I had raised at all. I already have the entire post-mortem timeline calculated. The funeral will be simple, but dignified. We'll invite all his neighborhood friends so they can see what good sons we were, especially me, who sacrificed myself to care for him at home instead of sending him to a nursing home. Then we sell the house immediately before it depreciates further, transfer all the savings, cancel the insurance policies, and with that money, we buy that house in Santa Barbara you want so much, bigger, with a pool, in the gated community where the kids can grow up properly. My own son had not only planned my murder, but had also designed how he was going to use my death to improve his social and economic status. He had turned my funeral into a networking opportunity and my inheritance into a real estate investment plan. The next day, when Patricia served me breakfast along with my morning medicines, I watched her with microscopic attention. There was a pill I definitely didn't recognize among the usual ones. A small capsule, pale blue in color, without any identifying marks. When she turned around to get more coffee, I pretended to swallow it, but hid it under my tongue, and as soon as I could, I discreetly spit it into a napkin that I then kept in my pajama pocket. "How are you feeling this beautiful morning, dear father-in-law?" Patricia asked with that smile I now recognized as completely artificial. "A little better, I think." I deliberately lied. "I feel like the treatment is starting to take effect, that I'm recovering faster than expected." I saw how her face darkened. For a fraction of a second, A micro-expression of annoyance she tried to hide immediately. She had expected me to tell her I felt worse, not better. My improvement didn't fit into her planned death timeline. That same afternoon, taking advantage of the whole family being out shopping for the week, I called from the house landline to my old friend Roberto, a former cop who had worked 30 years in the investigation brigade and who owed me some important favors from the past. Roberto was one of those men who once considers you his friend, would do anything to help you without asking uncomfortable questions. "Roberto, I need to ask you a very big favor, but very discreet," I whispered, constantly looking toward the window to make sure no one was returning. "Tell me, Robert, what trouble did you get into now?" I think my own family wants to kill me." The words came out of my mouth like vomit, like something toxic that had been poisoning me from within. The silence on the other side of the line was so long, I thought the call had been disconnected. Then I heard Roberto's voice, but it was no longer the relaxed voice of my retired friend, chatting about trivial things. It was the voice of the professional investigator he had been for 3 decades, cold, analytical, completely focused. "Give me the exact address where you are. I'm coming there in an hour. And Robert, don't take anything they give you to eat or drink until I get there." Roberto appeared that same night, disguised as a cable TV company technician. He wore a completely convincing blue uniform, a cap with a logo, and a toolbox that looked absolutely legitimate. When Sebastian and Patricia returned from their shopping, he was at the door waiting. "Good evening. Sorry for the bother," he told them with the naturalness of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "I'm from the cable company. We've had reports of serious interference in this entire block, and I need to check all the internal connections in the houses to identify the source of the problem. It'll be quick, 20 minutes maximum." Sebastian and Patricia didn't suspect anything at all. Why would they suspect? He was an ordinary technician doing a routine check. They let him in, even offered him coffee while he worked. In those 20 minutes, Roberto installed a surveillance system that would have impressed the CIA. Microscopic cameras the size of a coin in my room, in the kitchen, in the dining room, nearly invisible audio devices in strategic places where the family gathered to talk. Everything connected wirelessly to an external server that recorded 24 hours a day. Everything is automatically transmitted to a secure server I manage from my office. He explained to me in a very low voice, while pretending to check the cable behind my TV. "Every conversation, every movement, every moment will be recorded with date, time, and perfect image quality. If something happens to you, all the evidence will be there, intact and impossible to manipulate." He also discreetly took the mysterious pill I had saved. "I'll call you in exactly 3 days with the chemical analysis results," he promised before leaving. "And Robert, keep taking your normal medications, but anything new they give you, pretend to swallow it and save it for me. I need samples of everything they're administering to you." Those 3 days were the longest and most terrifying of my life. I continued pretending to take all the medication they gave me, acting like the weak and confused old man they wanted me to be. But at night, when they thought I was sleeping deeply sedated, I listened to their plans becoming increasingly specific, more detailed, more monstrous. Dr. Ramirez confirmed to me that we should already be seeing more severe symptoms, Sebastian said with growing frustration. More pronounced mental confusion, breathing difficulties, irregular heart palpitations. But the old man seems to be the same as always. "Maybe we need to be more aggressive with the doses," Patricia suggested, "or change the administration method. Could it be that he's realizing and not taking everything?" "No, that's impossible. I see him swallow every pill. Besides, he's so senile, he doesn't even remember what he had for breakfast. His organism must be more resistant than we calculated." "Well, but we have to do something. He's been here almost a month, and I can't take it anymore. Yesterday, Sophie asked me why Grandpa looks so weird lately, why he walks like a zombie. The kids are starting to realize something's not right. Let me talk to the doctor tomorrow. Maybe we have to modify the approach, be more direct." Direct. That word made me imagine horrors I preferred not to consider too deeply. Roberto called me on the 4th day. when the family had gone out to lunch at Patricia's in-laws. His voice sounded grave, worried, with the tone of someone who had seen too many horrible things in his career, but could still be shocked. "Robert, that pill you gave me. It's digitalis in a concentration that could kill a horse," he told me bluntly. "It's a medication used to treat heart problems, but in normal therapeutic doses. What they were giving you is practically pure poison. It causes exactly the symptoms you described to me: progressive weakness, mental confusion, and if it accumulates in the organism for weeks, it causes cardiac arrest that would seem like the natural progression of your previous condition." The world collapsed on me. My own son, flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, was poisoning me methodically and scientifically, and he was doing it with professional medical knowledge, with the help of someone who understood exactly how to kill a person without leaving suspicious traces. "There are more things you need to know," Roberto continued. "I investigated that Dr. Ramirez you mentioned in the recordings. Sylvia Ramirez, 52 years old, was expelled from the Medical Association 4 years ago for prescribing controlled medications in exchange for money. She also had legal problems for signing fraudulent death certificates for a criminal organization that was dedicated to life insurance scams. Now she works at low-category private clinics that don't verify their employees' backgrounds very thoroughly." "How did Sebastian find her?" "I'm still investigating that, but I have a theory. Your son works at an insurance company, right? It's very likely he encountered cases where this woman was involved and kept her information for future personal use. The planning, the premeditation, the level of detail of the conspiracy made me understand that this hadn't been an impulsive decision. Sebastian had been thinking about killing me for a long time, maybe years, waiting for the perfect opportunity. My heart attack hadn't been the trigger for his plan. It had simply been the excuse he needed to put it into motion." "What can I do, Roberto? How can I get out of this alive?" "First, don't take a single pill more of what they give you. If they ask why you feel better, tell them you're responding well to treatment. Second, keep pretending you feel gradually worse, but very subtly. Third, I need you to give me 1 more week to gather enough evidence not only to arrest them, but to convict them to effective prison for attempted qualified homicide." The following days were an acting performance that deserved an Oscar. I feigned confusion when Patricia asked me simple things. I swayed slightly when walking through the house. I faked small breathing difficulties when climbing stairs, and they, believing their plan was working perfectly, became more careless with their conversations, more open about their true intentions. One night, I heard them celebrating in the kitchen while preparing dinner. "Look how he is today," Sebastian said, with genuine joy that broke my heart. "Yesterday, when I took him to the cardiologist for his checkup, even the doctor commented that his general condition is deteriorating faster than expected. I give him 2 more weeks, 3 at most. And then what do? Call the ambulance when we find him." "Exactly. We'll say he woke up with chest pains, that we immediately called emergency services, but unfortunately they didn't arrive in time. Natural death from heart failure, just as his doctor predicted after the heart attack. And the will is ready? Perfect. Lawyer Martinez has everything prepared. I signed as a witness along with his secretary. As soon as we have the death certificate, the house and all the savings automatically pass to my name. Michael will receive some minor things, so he can't legally challenge it, but the substantial stuff stays with us." "How much do you calculate we'll inherit in total?" "Between the house, which is easily worth $2.5 million in the current market, the savings he has in 3 different banks, and the life insurance indemnity I contracted in his name last year without him knowing, we're talking about close to $4.5 million. Enough to buy that house in Santa Barbara with heated pool and tennis court, send the kids to bilingual schools, and live comfortably while I find something better than this mediocre job at the insurance company." They had contracted life insurance in my name without my knowledge. This was no longer just murder. It was a complex criminal operation they had been planning for months, maybe years. But the conversation that emotionally destroyed me the most was one they had 2 nights later, when they thought I was deeply sedated by the extra medication they had given me. "Don't you feel bad even a little bit about what we're doing?" Patricia asked with a voice that sounded almost curious, as if she were asking about the weather. Bad? Why should I feel bad? Sebastian responded with a naturalness that chilled me to the bone. That old man is completely ruining our lives. The kids can't live normally in their own house. You can't work because you have to take care of him. I have to pretend every day that I care about his well-being, when really it disgusts me to even touch him. Besides, look at the objective reality. He's going to die in 1 or 2 years anyway. All we're doing is accelerating a natural process and keeping what rightfully belongs to us. But he's your father, Sebastian, the man who raised you, who worked his whole life to give you a good education. My father died the day he emotionally blackmailed me in the hospital. If you put me in the will, I won't put you in a nursing home. Remember? That was the moment he stopped being my father and became a financial problem that needed to be solved. What's sleeping in that back room is no longer a human being with feelings. It's just an obstacle between us and the life we deserve to have. That night, I cried silently for hours, with my face buried in the pillow so they wouldn't hear me. My own son had rationalized my murder in such a way that he not only felt no guilt, but had convinced himself that I deserved it. He had rewritten the story of our relationship to justify the unjustifiable. Roberto came to visit me a week later, disguised this time as an electrician who came to check a reported problem with the house's wiring. Sebastian and Patricia received him with the same naturalness as always, without the slightest suspicion that this man was meticulously documenting every aspect of their murderous conspiracy. He took advantage of the visit to change the microscopic batteries of all the cameras and discreetly gave me a small personal recording device. "Always carry it with you," he whispered while pretending to check the outlet behind my bed. "If at any moment you feel your life is in immediate danger, press this red button. It will send an emergency signal directly to my phone and the nearest police station." The news he gave me that time was even more terrifying than the previous ones. "I have recordings of more than 40 hours where they plan your death with chilling details, Robert. Conversations where they calculate exactly when you're going to die, how they're going to simulate it was natural, what they're going to do with your body, how they're going to divide your inheritance. It's enough evidence to put them in prison for attempted qualified homicide and criminal conspiracy." And Dr. Ramirez? We have her completely documented too. An undercover operation I coordinated with former colleagues managed to record her selling digitalis without medical prescription and explaining in detail how to use it to simulate natural deaths in cardiac patients. She's going to fall along with them, and she'll probably rat out other clients to get a sentence reduction. When are you going to act? Tomorrow morning. But I need you to do me one last favor, and it's going to be the hardest thing you've done in your life. I need you to pretend tonight that you feel terribly bad, like you're reaching the end. I want them to be completely confident, to believe their plan is working perfectly, and that death is hours away. That last night at my son's house was the most heartbreaking performance of my existence. Around 8 in the evening, I called Sebastian with a weak, broken voice, telling him I felt horrible, that I had a stabbing pain in my chest, that I could barely breathe, that I felt like I was going to faint at any moment. I literally saw him light up with excitement. When he entered my room, his eyes shone with an expectation that made me understand. He was truly wishing for my death with every fiber of his being. "Do you want me to take you to the hospital, Dad?" he asked, but I could read in his body language that it was pure theater. If he really wanted to save me, he would have called the ambulance immediately, without even asking me. "No, son," I whispered with the most fragile voice I could produce. I just want you to know that despite everything that happened, despite our differences, I forgive you for everything, and I want you to know I'm proud of the man you became, the father you are, the son you were when you were younger." I saw how his eyes completely lit up, believing I was having my last lucid conversations, my last confessions of paternal love. "I love you too, Dad, and I want you to know that taking care of you during these months has been an honor, a privilege. There's nothing in the world I wouldn't have done for you." An honor, a privilege, lying to the face of someone who's dying about the love you feel for them, while you're systematically poisoning them, was an honor for my son. The hypocrisy was so monumental, I felt real nausea. Patricia entered shortly after with a steaming cup. I made you a special tea with relaxing herbs to help you sleep better, dear father-in-law, she told me with that maternal smile she had perfected for months. The cup probably contained a dose of digitalis sufficient to kill me that very night. I pretended to take small sips while they watched me with the attention of scientists waiting for a chemical reaction. Thank you, Patricia, I murmured. You were always like a daughter to me. Take good care of Sebastian when I'm not here, and tell the kids that Grandpa loved them until the last day of his life. I saw fake tears running down her cheeks as she hugged me. Don't talk like that, father-in-law. You're going to be with us for many more years. But I could feel how she trembled with expectation against my body. Rest, Dad, Sebastian told me, kissing my forehead with lips that felt like ice. Tomorrow you'll wake up better. But we both knew he expected me not to wake up at all. That dawn, pretending to be in deep drug-induced sleep, I heard them in their last anticipatory celebration. I think tonight is going to be the definitive night, Sebastian said with an excitement that turned my stomach. Are you completely sure? Look how he was. He could barely keep his eyes open, breathed with extreme difficulty, was completely mentally confused. Dr. Ramirez told me these were exactly the terminal symptoms. The heart is finally collapsing, and if he dies while we're sleeping, won't it be suspicious that we didn't take him to the hospital during the night? Not at all. We'll say he passed away peacefully in his sleep, without suffering. It's the most natural and peaceful way to die for someone with his cardiac condition. The medical examiner won't even consider doing a detailed autopsy. Do you already have in mind what we're going to say when we find we're going to discover him around 7:30 in the morning, when I normally get up for work? I'm going to enter his room to see how he was during the night, and I'm going to find him without vital signs. We immediately call emergency medical services, then Michael to give him the tragic news, and then lawyer Martinez to initiate the will procedures. They even had timed the moment of my discovery. They had planned my murder with the precision of a military operation. At exactly 6 in the morning, I heard movements in the house. Roberto had kept his promise. The voices coming from the front door weren't the usual ones of the family waking up, but hard, professional voices of authority. Federal police, open immediately or we'll break down the door. Sebastian and Patricia's desperate screams echoed throughout the house like heavenly music to my ears. What's happening? You must have the wrong house. My father is dying. You can't burst in like this. But the officers entered like a tsunami of justice. Prosecutors, police, forensic doctors, experts, all coordinated in an operation that had been planned for days with millimetric precision. Sebastian Morales, you're under arrest for attempted qualified homicide by family relationship, declared the officer in charge while placing handcuffs on him. Patricia Morales, you're under arrest as accomplice to attempted homicide and criminal conspiracy. This is impossible, Sebastian screamed while uselessly struggling against the handcuffs. My father is dying of natural causes. He has heart failure. Ask any doctor. It was at that moment that I made my triumphant appearance. I got up from bed with an agility I hadn't shown in months, put on my favorite robe, and walked toward the living room, where they had my potential murderers handcuffed. Seeing the expression on Sebastian's face when he realized I was completely lucid, completely healthy, and that I had been recording every one of their conversations for weeks, was one of the most satisfying moments of my entire life. Dad, what's happening here? What's happening, Sebastian, is that your honor of taking care of me included systematically poisoning me for 2 months with illegal digitalis. I told him with a voice that no longer trembled, that no longer feigned weakness. But it turns out, this stupid, senile old man wasn't so stupid after all. The prosecutor approached with a tablet, where he began playing the most incriminating recordings. Sebastian's voice filled the room. I give him 2 more weeks, 3 at most, natural death from heart failure, between the house and savings, close to 4.5 million. I saw how Sebastian emotionally collapsed while listening to his own words condemning him. Patricia had started crying hysterically, but they weren't tears of repentance. They were tears of someone crying about the consequences of being discovered, not about the horror of what she had tried to do. "Robert, please," Patricia begged me between sobs. "Think about the kids, about your family, about all the years we were happy together. It was all a terrible misunderstanding. We would never have really hurt you. We just wanted. The kids will be infinitely better off without parents who are capable of murdering their grandfather for money," I responded with a coldness that surprised me. "And as for family, my only real family is Michael, who worked double shifts to buy me vitamins while you were giving me poison," with a smile. Roberto appeared at that moment, no longer in his technician disguise, showing his real identification as a private investigator. "Robert, we need you to come with us to complete your testimonial statement. You're going to be the main witness in the trial." While I prepared to leave that house of horror, one of the experts showed me what they had found in an exhaustive search. In the master bedroom, hidden behind a pile of sheets, there was a shoebox full of evidence that made me tremble. Inside were photocopies of my will, with different versions of calculations about my estate, receipts for payments made to Dr. Ramirez, a detailed timeline of how to gradually increase poison doses, and most chilling, a handwritten draft of the speech Sebastian planned to give at my funeral. "My dear father fought valiantly against his heart disease," the paper said in my son's perfect handwriting. "We had the honor of accompanying him in his last months, of giving him all our love and care until the end. It was a privilege to witness his peaceful departure to the eternal rest he so deserved. He had written my funeral eulogy before killing me, and had crafted it as a masterpiece of emotional manipulation to convince everyone he had been the perfect son." Michael arrived an hour later, when Roberto contacted him to explain the entire situation. My poor younger son completely collapsed when he found out what had been happening during all those months he thought Sebastian was lovingly caring for me. "Dad, why didn't you tell me anything? I should have," he cried while hugging me with a desperation that broke my heart. "Because I needed irrefutable proof, son, and because if I told you, if I changed my behavior, they would have realized I knew what was happening. It was too dangerous for my life, and potentially for yours too. Sebastian was willing to kill for that inheritance, and we didn't know how far he was capable of going." That afternoon, while Sebastian and Patricia were being transferred to jail in different police vehicles, the neighbors from the block came out to watch the spectacle. Some of them approached to ask me what had happened, expressing their shock upon learning that such a close-knit family had turned out to be a facade to cover up an attempted murder. Mrs. Martinez, who lived in the house across the street, confessed something to me that made me understand that maybe other people had noticed strange things. "Mr. Robert, I always thought something wasn't right. Patricia bought your medications at a pharmacy on the other side of town, when right here on the corner we have one that's open 24 hours. And several times I saw her throwing pills in the trash after you took them, like she was hiding something. Even the neighbors had noticed suspicious behaviors that I, in my post-heart attack, weakened state, hadn't been able to fully perceive." During the following days, while we waited for the trial, more evidence of the conspiracy's depth continued to appear. The investigation revealed that Sebastian had been stealing money from my bank account for more than 2 years, long before my heart attack. Small amounts I hadn't noticed, but when added up, reached almost $200,000. They also discovered he had forged my signature on several documents, including the life insurance policy he had contracted in my name without my knowledge. The insurance company confirmed that Sebastian had been paying premiums for 18 months, insuring my life for $3 million with him as the sole beneficiary. Dr. Ramirez, faced with mountains of evidence and recordings where she was heard selling poison, decided to collaborate with justice in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony was absolutely devastating. She described with clinical details how she had instructed Sebastian and Patricia about exact digitalis doses, administration intervals, and how to make my death appear as the natural progression of my previous cardiac condition. She also revealed this wasn't the first time she had provided this type of services to families wanting to accelerate inheritances. "Mr. Morales initially contacted me 8 months ago," she declared before the prosecutor. "He told me his father was an obstacle to his family's economic stability and that he needed a solution that wouldn't generate legal suspicions. I explained that with his previous cardiac condition, It would be relatively simple to simulate a natural death using digitalis in carefully calculated doses. 8 months. My son had been planning my murder since 8 months before my heart attack. The cardiac episode hadn't been the trigger for his plan. It had simply accelerated a timeline that was already in motion. During the trial's preparatory hearings, I had to listen to testimonies and evidence that showed me aspects of my son's personality I had never suspected. Work colleagues testified that Sebastian talked openly about my father problem and about how he was solving the situation definitively. His direct boss at the insurance company revealed that Sebastian had been consulting cases of suspicious natural deaths, studying how investigators determined if a death had been caused by external factors. He had been educating himself on how to commit the perfect crime using his own work resources. But perhaps the most devastating testimony came from Sebastian's own children, my grandchildren, Matthew and Sophie. When social workers interviewed them as part of the investigation, they revealed conversations they had overheard between their parents that chilled my blood. Matthew, 16 years old, declared he had heard his father say, "In a few months we're going to have much more money and we'll be able to move to a much better house." When the boy asked where that money was going to come from, Sebastian had responded, "Grandpa is going to help us more than he imagines." Sophie, 14, remembered her mother telling her not to get too attached to Grandpa because elderly people sometimes go to heaven unexpectedly, a grotesque way of psychologically preparing her own children for my planned death. The kids also confirmed they had noticed strange changes in my behavior and appearance during the months I lived with them. But when they asked, their parents told them it was normal for people my age and that they shouldn't worry because I was being well cared for. The trial itself was a media circus that lasted 3 months. Sebastian and Patricia's defense lawyers tried to use every possible strategy to minimize their crimes. They argued temporary mental disorder caused by stress, undue influence from a corrupt medical professional, and even tried to suggest I had misinterpreted innocent conversations due to my medication. But the recordings were so clear, the evidence so overwhelming, and the testimonies so consistent that none of their defenses managed to generate reasonable doubt in the jury. The most impactful hearing was when they played the complete recording of the conversation, where Sebastian explained in detail how they were going to find my body and what they were going to tell medical authorities. His own voice filling the courtroom, describing my death with the coldness of someone discussing the weather forecast. Patricia tried at one point to blame Sebastian completely, alleging she had been manipulated and never really wanted to participate in the plan. But recordings existed where she was heard suggesting ways to accelerate the process and even asking if they could be more direct if the poison took too long to take effect. The sentence came after 4 hours of jury deliberation. Sebastian was sentenced to 18 years of effective prison for attempted qualified homicide by family relationship, criminal conspiracy, document forgery, and fraud. Patricia received 15 years as accomplice on all charges. Dr. Ramirez was sentenced to 10 years for illegal supply of toxic substances and participation in criminal conspiracy. But for me, true justice wasn't in the legal convictions, but in something much deeper and more definitive. Sebastian and Patricia's children, when they were old enough to fully understand what had happened, made a decision that moved me to tears. Matthew, who turned 18 during the 2nd year of his parents' incarceration, decided to legally change his paternal surname. He no longer wanted to carry the name of a man who had tried to murder his own father for money. Sophie, when she turned 18, did the same. Both wrote me letters asking forgiveness for what their parents had done, expressing their horror and shame at having been raised by people capable of such monstrosity. They told me they wanted to maintain a relationship with me if I was willing, but would completely understand if I couldn't forgive what they had tried to do to me. Those letters made me cry for hours, but not from sadness. I cried from relief, realizing that despite being raised by sociopathic parents, my grandchildren had developed a healthy moral compass. Evil hadn't been hereditary in my family. Michael moved in with me to a new house we bought together, Smaller but filled with the kind of love that had been completely absent in the previous one. It took us time to heal the emotional wounds, especially Michael's, who blamed himself enormously for not having noticed the signs of what was happening. How could I have been so blind, Dad? How didn't I realize my own brother was slowly killing you? He constantly reproached himself during the first months. Because you're a good person, Michael, and genuinely good people can't easily imagine such calculated evil exists, especially in their own family. Your inability to suspect Sebastian wasn't a weakness. It was evidence of your decency as a human being. Michael married Carla 2 years after the trial ended. The wedding was small but beautiful, filled with true love and the presence of people who really mattered to us. While walking with my son toward the altar, I couldn't help thinking about Sebastian, rotting in a cell, forever losing life's most important moments for having chosen money over family. A year and a half ago, I became a grandfather again when Emma was born, Michael and Carla's daughter. When I held her in my arms for the first time, with her curious little eyes looking at me and her tiny hands clinging to my finger, I understood with absolute clarity why I had survived all this horror. It hadn't been just to obtain justice against Sebastian and Patricia. It had been to be present for this new life, to be the grandfather Emma deserved, to transmit the values of unconditional love that her father had learned and that she would need to grow up in a world where sometimes the closest people can be the most dangerous. Sebastian continues writing me letters from prison. At first they came almost weekly, full of desperate pleas, promises of repentance, oaths that it had all been temporary madness caused by financial problems and work stress. He begged me to visit him, to give him a chance to explain himself, to consider the possibility of forgiving a son who had made terrible mistakes but still loved me. I read the first letters completely, trying to find some trace of genuine remorse, some sign that the man I had raised still existed somewhere beneath the surface of the monster who had tried to kill me. But what I found was refined emotional manipulation, calculated attempts to generate guilt and pity, the same operational coldness now disguised as repentance. Over time, the letters became more aggressive, more resentful. He began blaming me for destroying his family, for ruining his children's future, for choosing Michael over him. Even from prison, he remained incapable of assuming complete responsibility for his actions. The last letter I received, about 6 months ago, was different, shorter, more direct, and deeply disturbing. It simply said, "Dad, when I get out of here in 14 years, I'm going to be 58 years old. You're going to be 86 if you're still alive. We'll see who has the last word in this story." I immediately took that letter to Roberto, who now worked as my personal security advisor. His analysis was conclusive. Sebastian has learned nothing. He feels no remorse. He still sees this as a war he temporarily lost, not as a crime he committed. When he gets out, he's still going to be dangerous. Since then, we've taken additional precautions. I changed my will again, leaving very specific instructions about what to do if something happens to me naturally or accidentally in the coming years. Roberto maintains an updated file with all of Sebastian's correspondence, documenting his continued lack of remorse and implicit threats. Michael knows the entire situation, and we've developed security protocols for when Sebastian is eventually released. We don't live in fear, but we do live with intelligent caution. Matthew and Sophie, now independent adults, maintain a close relationship with me, but have made the conscious decision to completely cut contact with their father. Matthew told me in a recent conversation, "Grandpa, I understand that genetically that man is my father, but morally, ethically, emotionally, he stopped being my father the day he decided to poison you. I don't have a father. I only have a sperm donor who happens to be a criminal." It's a terrible sadness that my grandchildren had to make such hard decisions at such a young age, but it also fills me with pride to see the moral strength they've developed despite the circumstances. Yesterday afternoon, while playing with Emma in our house's garden, Michael sat next to me on the bench we built together under the lemon tree. "Dad," he told me with that serene voice he had developed since becoming a father, "I want you to know something very important. When you're really old, when you need real care, when you can no longer take care of yourself, It's going to be a genuine honor for me to care for you. A real honor, not like the lies Sebastian told you. And I'm going to do it not because I expect to inherit anything, but because I love you unconditionally." He was quiet for a moment, watching Emma chase butterflies among the flowers we had planted. "And besides," he continued, "I already talked to Carla about this. When that time comes, you're going to come live with us. Emma is going to grow up knowing her grandfather, learning from your wisdom, listening to stories of your life. You're going to be an integral part of our family, not a burden we have to endure." At that moment, with my granddaughter laughing in the garden, my good son promising me true love for my final years, and the afternoon sun illuminating the house we had turned into the home we always deserved to have, I understood I had won the most important war of my life. Because in the end, I discovered a fundamental truth that Sebastian could never understand. Real family isn't defined by the blood we share, but by the love we give without calculations, without conditions, without expecting to receive anything material in return. True love isn't inherited, can't be bought, can't be negotiated in wills. It simply exists, or it doesn't exist. And I had the extraordinary fortune of discovering, before it was too late, which of my sons had really understood it, which of my sons really loved me, and which of my sons deserved to receive not only my material inheritance, but something infinitely more valuable, my trust, my respect, and my unconditional love until the last day of my life. Sebastian had chosen money. Michael had chosen love. And in that choice, each had sealed his destiny forever.